A weak F-rank adventurer becomes the strongest among everyone, and the miracle is that he started learning at the age of 30. He surprises everyone. This adventurer is named Senpai. Stay tuned until the end to discover the origin of his story. Our episode begins today with that group fighting a muscular man, but they beat him severely. He then raises his head and tells them, "You are still far from my level." The scene then shifts to the city where the bright sun and clear sky are visible while some adventurers are moving around. Each of them has their own dreams and ambitions to become a great hero one day. They finally arrive at the training or examination arena where the organization calls for the ceremony. The applicants for the rank promotion test are asked to register here in this place. Then the hero named Senpai enters, and the guild girl is surprised. She says to him, "Are you Rick Senpai? I am Alyssa, and I am very pleased that you have come here. It has been 2 years since we last met." She then remembers what happened previously when Senpai resigned. She was greatly surprised when she later learned that he had become an adventurer. An adventurer usually starts from childhood, but becoming one at the age of 30 is truly unbelievable. Normally, people begin as F-rank apprentices in their teens and then become beginner adventurers at a rank within 2 years. Alyssa then asks, "But tell me, Senpai, what have you been doing for the past 2 years?" He replies, "I was secluded in the mountains, training with some senior adventurers." At that moment, someone interrupts them and says to her, "Hello, miss, are you free now?" She tells him that she is working at the moment and is not available. The person, who appears to be drunk and wants to harass her, approaches her. But Senpai stops him and says, hold on, you ignorant fool." He places his hand on the person's shoulder, calming him down, and he completely loses consciousness, falling to the ground, possibly due to drinking too much. Senpai then gives them a great lesson about drinking alcohol, saying that it completely clouds the mind and is internationally prohibited, and that only fools drink it. Alyssa, the guild girl, smiles at him and says, "All right, Senpai, here is your examination ticket. It is ready now. Good luck with your A-rank test." He thanks her, takes the ticket, and finds that his number is 4,242. He is suddenly shocked and says to himself, "A bad luck number that resembles death. I am worried now." Then he leaves the guild, feeling very sad, and meets a girl named Renette. He talks to her about the young people inside the guild, how they are very serious and full of hope and dreams, thinking they can become whatever they want. Each has their own dreams and ambitions. The scene then shifts back inside the guild, where they notice a mark on this steel armor and identify the man as Domold, the demonic knight who is now wanted for assault. Alyssa recalls what happened and wonders if Senpai was the one who did it and placed his hand like that. The scene then shifts to Senpai, who is getting measured by a doctor and finds out he is 174 cm tall, but is surprised to learn that he is 32 years old. The doctor then tells them that each of them will place their hand on a crystal to assess and measure their magical energy. Everyone places their hand, and when Senpai does, the result is a negative F, which is very low. However, the surprising thing is that the crystal immediately shatters afterward. The scene then shifts to the trainer and instructor, who tells them that they will now test their punching strength. Each of them will deliver a strong punch to this device, which is specifically designed to measure the strength of the punch and absorb the impact. So they shouldn't worry and should give it their all. Senpai thinks to himself, "Is this a holo bag?" He then remembers what happened previously with his colleagues. One of his colleagues told him, regardless of the weapon or magic you might use, the basis of everything is your body. If you can destroy this golden slime bag with your bare hands, you'll know that you've built a body you can rely on. He told him, "But I can't destroy something with the strength of a dragon's tooth with my bare hands." His friend replied, "This is a very simple task for an adventurer," and then he smashed it with his hand, demonstrating his ability to destroy 200 bags in one punch. "Now you will start with 50,000 punches a day, and we will increase it later." Returning to the present, this training was hell for Senpai and extremely hard work. Everyone began testing their strength, and then the second son of the Duke entered. He was only 11 years old, but everyone said he had magic equivalent to rank G, a true child prodigy. He used his full power, and after all these moves, a small ball emerged. Senpai was surprised and said, "Is this flame magic?" He then remembered when his colleague trained him with that explosive ball. Everyone continued to test their strength until it was Senpai's turn. The director then says to him, "Wait, it is said that you started as an adventurer when you were 30 years old. Is that true?" Senpai replies, "Yes, it is. The guild leader tells him, if you haven't trained your magic since you were young, don't expect any growth later. The results of your magic capacity measurement are dreadful. I say this for your own good. You should give up now. Senpai remembers how hard he trained, never giving up to the point where his fists were bleeding. Returning to the present, he says, it's true that I started very late, but God does not waste the reward of those who do good. I will never give up, no matter the age at which I start as an adventurer. He then uses his fist and delivers a punch that shatters the entire wall. Everyone is shocked, with great surprise on their faces. Fred Dyermuid feels sad that Rick stole the spotlight from him, but he doesn't mind because his real specialty is defensive magic. When they measure their defensive capabilities, he will show what he can do. They then move on to the next training session, which is measuring their defensive ability against strong spells. We see Rick defending himself against magic very well, making Fred Dyermuid sad again because he couldn't defend against composite nature magic of the 4th level as Rick did. The trainer thanks Rick, confirming that he can use defensive magic. He knew Rick used an air cushion to defend himself. The trainer decides to escalate and use composite nature magic of the 5th level instead of the 1st level. Rick, feeling very embarrassed but determined, decides to use a higher rank of defensive magic this time. He can only use one of each of the 1st level composite nature magic for attack and defense. The trainer asks him to control his power well to avoid getting hurt. The trainer then uses the 5th level composite nature magic and hits Rick with it. Rick easily defends against it. The scene then shifts to Sylvester Elsernia, a first-class knight of the kingdom with the knightness Dono. The trainer approaches them and tells them about Rick, an F-rank adventurer who destroyed a green slime bag with a single punch from his bare hand and blocked 5th level composite nature magic with 1st level magic. They are shocked by the adventurer's strength and even more astonished when they learn his age, and that he worked as a receptionist at the Tiger Road branch of the guild for 14 years. They are amazed that this adventurer killed a dragon. After the preliminary test, Rick sits with Renette. She asks him about the written exam, and he tells her he is confident he got an excellent score. You can't underestimate a former office clerk with 14 years of experience, he says. However, he is not sure if he will pass the preliminary test, as he is very worried about the practical exams since he got an F- in magical capacity. Renette reassures him, saying that he has shown incredible growth over the past 2 years. At that moment, Fred Dyermuid approaches them, very angry. Rick mocks him, offering to help him find his parents, which angers Fred even more. Fred had wanted to showcase his genius in the test and make a grand appearance. Fred's sister, Angelica, arrives, upset about what happened to her brother and scolding Rick. Fred tells her that this old man, who is 40 years old, is bullying him. Rick, overhearing this, angrily retorts that he is still in his 30s. The two begin to argue about this, and Angelica challenges Rick to a duel. Angelica says, I challenge you to a duel. Rick, surprised, replies, you've dirtied your glove quite a bit, but you don't know that washing clothes is very tiring. Renette tells him that he has already accepted the duel by picking up the glove. Angelica declares, I am a second-class knight of the kingdom. I will now bring justice upon this 40-something peasant. Each participant can propose one condition for the duel. The first condition is that the loser must serve the winner as a servant until death. Rick speaks with Renette, saying she is a second-class knight of the kingdom. Renette replies, yes, kingdom knights act as peacekeepers in the kingdom of Vilheim. A second-class knight is equivalent to a B-rank adventurer. Rick says at B rank, you can defeat high-level monsters on your own, and I'm an F-rank adventurer. I'm not just worried. I'm terrified I won't leave alive. Renette reassures him, remember your training over the past 2 years. Rick recalls his training and feels very scared. Renette continues, but you're not nervous anymore. Believe in yourself. The Orichalcum Fist Party prides itself on being the strongest on the continent. Rick thanks Renette and approaches Angelica. She says, since you're an F-rank adventurer, I'll make some concessions and refrain from killing you. Rick thinks to himself, she's the type who enhances her body and weapons. Angelica uses her strength, and Rick defends against her attack. She remarks, it seems I was too fast for an F-rank adventurer like you. You're so shocked you can't even make a sound. She advances again, moving very quickly, but Rick imagines her movements as being very slow. She's much slower than me, he thinks, when Rick naturally runs and dodges Angelica's strike. She says he read my move entirely. Only a few first-class knights can react properly to my speed, even if he managed to dodge once. She charges at him again, and Rick reads her move, but she stumbles on a stone and her sword hits the wall. She thinks to herself, I tripped, but I'll pretend I did it on purpose. I'll move even faster now. This is a high-speed movement technique I can only use 3 times. My speed will be incomparable to what it was before. She moves incredibly fast, and Rick notes. She's 3 times faster than before, but she's still slow. However, if I move carelessly here, she might unleash another deadly sword move. He dodges her attack again. Angelica is astonished and says, he dodged it again. Who is this man? I can only use the millennia technique twice more. If it doesn't work the first time, I just need to strike at maximum speed in succession. She uses all her strength, but fails each time. Rick strikes her and she trembles in fear, saying, who are you? He replies, 2 years ago. I changed from being a receptionist at the guild to an adventurer. I'm just an ordinary adventurer. I don't know how effective my strength will be against you, but I'll unleash everything I have. Angelica, now afraid, surrenders to him. But this time, I'll let you win since you managed to dodge my fast moves. I'll be lenient this time. Let's go now. Rick responds, and what about the punishment? You said the loser must serve the winner as a servant until death. I didn't propose any condition. Can I use the same condition you chose? Angelica, frightened, runs away quickly. This episode of the anime ends here. Stay tuned for the next episodes. Don't forget to subscribe and activate the notification bell to get all the latest updates. Our second episode begins with Alyssa informing everyone about the announcement of the preliminary exam results. Magical energy will be transferred to each exam ticket, and if it glows blue, it means the person has passed. Those who pass will participate in the second exam tomorrow, which is a mock battle. We then see our hero Rick wondering if he will succeed. Reenet tells him never to lose hope. Rick wishes he were 10 years younger, thinking it would be better. Reenet then tells him that if he fails the exam, his training will be tripled, which scares Rick greatly. Suddenly, a light emits from Rick's ID card, and it turns blue, meaning he has passed the exam. Rick is overjoyed, and Reenet congratulates him. As they leave the room, Rick smells a very foul odor and wonders what it is. We then see a young man, Raster, approaching Reenet. He greets her and introduces himself as the eldest son of the Dermot household, which rules the northern lands. He asks her name and she tells him it is Reenet Alflet. Rick wonders if Raster will also take the exam. He then greets Raster, saying, hello Raster, I'm Rick Gladiato. Raster looks at him with disdain and says he isn't interested in Rick's presence. He starts complimenting Reenet, telling her she has a gentle heart and very beautiful eyes. He asks her to go with him to the northern lands and marry him as his second wife. Rick is very surprised and intervenes, asking Raster what he wants. Rick tells him that Reenet is his beloved, and he can't stay silent when he sees him flirting with her right in front of his eyes. Raster laughs mockingly, then looks at Rick's card and realizes he will take the promotion exam. Raster laughs derisively because Rick is still a rank F at his age. Rick tells him that age doesn't matter and asks Raster about his strength. Raster responds, asking if Rick can't even gauge a person's strength, calling him a loser. He says he was promoted to rank E when he was 14 and is now a rank A. He is also the examiner for the second test in the mock battle. Raster then shows a very beautiful necklace, which makes Rick very nervous. Beatrice Strasser tells him to get out of his way and asks Reenet to leave Rick and join him for dinner. She apologizes and refuses, moving closer to Rick and saying she is in a relationship with him and can't go out to dinner with another man. She also tells him that his cologne is so strong it's bothersome. Rick asks Raster, is that smell coming from? Raster gets very angry and says to Rick, you fool, since I'm your examiner in the mock battle for the second test, prepare yourself for defeat. He then leaves angrily. Rick hopes he won't face Raster in the same competition. He moves away from Reenet and apologizes for telling Raster she was his beloved without her permission. Reenet tells him she isn't mad. It made her very happy, and he got her out of a difficult situation. Rick blushes deeply. The scene shifts to a cafe where we see Raster drinking his beverage, still very angry about what happened with Rick and Reenet. Suddenly, his brother Fred and sister Angelica enter, both crying. Fred tells him that in the first exam today, an ordinary man in his 40s bullied him. Angelica says the same man used the oath of duel as a shield and almost subjected her to terrible humiliation. Raster gets furious that someone made members of the noble Dermot household cry. Suddenly he says, wait a moment, did you say this man was in his 40s? He asks his brother if he remembers the examiner number of that man. Fred tells him, and Raster realizes that the man is Rick. He smiles and vows to make him pay in the mock battle. On the morning of the mock battle, we see Rick walking with Rinit. Rinit tells him to treat everyone kindly. Rick asks her what he should do if he faces Raster, as he's definitely stronger than him. Suddenly, a man appears in front of them and asks Rick, "Are you Rick?" The man welcomes him and introduces himself as Link's Lorod. He tells Rick that he will be his examiner in the second test, overseeing everyone who passed the preliminary exam with a number above 4,200. Rick is very happy because he won't have to face Raster. Lynx tells him that he admires him for becoming an adventurer at an older age. Lynx himself started as an adventurer when he was 24. Like Rick, he is now 40 but strives to reach rank A to fulfill his dream. Although it took him 20 years, he has reached rank B and has no intention of giving up. They shake hands and we see Raster standing nearby, hidden, listening to their conversation. Later we see Lynx walking alone when suddenly Raster appears in front of them and says, "You lowly man, I want to speak with you in private." The scene shifts to Rinite and Rick, who look happy. Then we see an official announcing that those with numbers 4,200 and above will be tested by Lynx, but due to his sudden illness, another examiner has been chosen, Raster Dermot. Rick is terrified upon hearing this name. Rennet tells him that Fred and Angelica, whom they met yesterday, are his siblings. We then see the other trainees discussing Raster. He is the son of a very noble family and achieved rank A at the age of 17. He is a genius known as the Man of 1,000 Abilities. However, his other nickname is the Rank Crusher. They say he enjoys tormenting examinees who catch his attention every year. Rick is so shocked that he feels like crying because he realizes that he caught Raster's attention last night to the extent that he won't be able to see anyone else but him. The scene then shifts to Raster in the training field, using a 4th level composite magic spell, the Ice Cyclone, which causes a massive explosion in the area. At that moment, a guard approaches him, needing something from him. Meanwhile, the scene shifts back to Rick and Rinit. Rick is very distressed, pacing around and saying, "Oh my god, what do I do now? This is too hard for me. I'm up against the Man of 1,000 Abilities who also holds rank A and hates me. And I'm just a rank F guy who can only use 2 first-level composite spells." He puts his hands on his face and says, "Damn it. I should just go home and let my mom lick my wounds like a dog licks her little puppy." At that moment, Rinnet stands up and says to him, "Aren't you ashamed of yourself, man? Why don't you have more confidence? You're very strong, but you also need to believe in yourself." Rick responds, "I know that well. I also know I started late in all this, and everyone tells me I'm a strong hero." She tells him, "You need to be more manly in these situations. Other people's words can drive confidence, and I'm telling you that you can pass this test with flying colors. You're very strong, Rick. You can beat the Man of 1,000 Abilities. You've been capable of this since the day you decided to become an adventurer." She then stands up and asks him, "Do you trust me?" He replies, "Yes, and thank you for motivating me with those wonderful words. If they were weighed against gold, they would be heavier than gold. I now feel that my confidence is starting to come back." At that moment, someone calls out to them and says, "Allow me to read your fortune. I'm good at this, don't worry. I'm not a suspicious person or anything like that. Since this is your first time, there's no need to pay anything." She then says to him, "Come, have a seat." But then something strange happens, and the face of that person is revealed to be Fred, who had set a trap specifically for him using teleportation magic. Rick is transported to another location, but Rinnet grabs Fred by his cloak, lifts him up, and demands, "Where did you send him? Tell me or I'll kill you and cut off your head." She then threatens him further by cutting off some of his hair, making Fred very scared. She warns him that the next cut will be his eye and asks, "Which eye do you want me to pluck out first, the right or the left?" Fred, terrified, says, "He didn't go far because my teleportation magic's range is only 100 meters. I think he's around here somewhere." Scene shifts to Rick, who wonders, "Where am I? Am I behind the test site?" At that moment, some strong individuals approach him, wanting to fight. Rick says to them, "Wait, are you sure you haven't mistaken me for someone else? I don't know you." They reply, "Unfortunately, there's no mistake. You are the one we're looking for. We are the personal guards of House Dermot." Rick is shocked and remembers Fred, his sister, and the other annoying person he met yesterday, Raster Sama. They then say to him, "Get ready to meet your doom. You will fail the exam without being able to participate. We will break your legs and destroy you completely." Realizing that they are rank A, Rick thinks, "This is the end for me." But at that moment, help arrives in the form of the three strong individuals who had been training him before. They say to him, "Rick, you have an exam. What are you doing here in this place?" Everyone is astonished that this orc can speak. The orc approaches Rick, asking in surprise why he is here despite having a test. Rick, flustered, asks him to wait a moment. One of the guards steps forward with a sword and threatens the orc, asking, "Who are you? Do you want to die here?" Rick quickly responds, saying that these men are helping him relax before the test to defuse the situation. Knowing that if he tells his orc friend they intend to harm him, the orc will kill them all. The guard is puzzled, and the orc says, "If that's true, I'll help too." He then shouts loudly, calling for the guard captain and pleading with him to withdraw, as their lives are at stake. The guard captain orders his men to deal with the situation. One of the guards strikes the orc with his large sword, which shatters into small pieces. The orc comments that while the guard has strengthened his physical power to a reasonable extent, he failed to reinforce his weapon, and the orc can't help but be impressed. He then breaks a piece of the sword with just 2 fingers effortlessly. The guard uses his physical strength to throw a powerful punch, but the orc easily blocks it and squeezes the guard's hand, causing him great pain and injuring his fist. The orc then reassures the guard and uses healing magic to restore his hand to its original state. Everyone is amazed as the orc explains that the guard's technique in strengthening his arm wasn't bad, but he is unbalanced. The orc advises that the entire body is one connected unit. Everyone is further astonished that the orc can not only speak but also use magic. The orc named Mizet says, "Listen, Rick, this is the issue. You found trouble and now you're being blamed for it, right? Well, in that case, I'll put an end to all this." He then reveals a large weapon, surprising Rick. Mizet tells them, "I recently developed this. It's the modified version of the Super Flame Cannon Juliet, loaded with magic-infused lead stones." The soldiers raise their weapons, stating they will deal with each of them one by one, and then they charge at Rick and his companions to attack them. Mizet then fires his powerful weapon at them, taking them down one by one with ease. Rick is astonished at how quickly he defeated them and was about to ask him to wait, but it was already over in mere seconds. Rick is very angry, but his friend reassures him that they are not dead. They have just been paralyzed for a while. Suddenly, one of the guards threatens Rick and his companions by holding a weapon to a young girl's neck. Rick pleads, "Please don't do this. It would be in your best interest to release her." The girl asks, "What is this man doing?" Rick tells her he wants to play with you. The girl is excited, but the guard tightens his grip on her neck with the weapon, causing her pain. In response, the girl releases an immense power and takes him down instantly. Despite her young age, she casts a 7th-level composite nature spell. The guard captain and the remaining guard are in utter shock because she is the most powerful vampire sorceress at such a young age. Known as the demonic child of destruction, Dracul, the other young man with yellow hair, despite his appearance, is over 50 years old. His techniques are 1,000 years ahead of their time. He is the greatest craftsman of weapons in the world, known as the millennial craftsman Mizet Eldwarf. The orc possesses immense physical strength and intelligence, capable of using all supportive magic techniques, known as the Wise Beast, Brostin Ashork. The captain speaks about them, then tells his guard that all 3 of them are S-rank adventurers and members of a party composed solely of S-rank holders, the most powerful party on the continent, the legendary Orichalcum Fist. The captain never imagined he would see them with his own eyes. He decides to retire and live the rest of his life in peace, dropping his weapons to the ground as tears stream from his eyes. The young girl swiftly defeats each opponent one by one, leaving Rick dismayed by the events. "All right, I'll go give my best in the test," he says. Meanwhile, Rick's friend is still holding the young captive, who asks apologetically, "How long do you plan to keep me like this, miss?" She replies, "Until Rick-sama returns." The young captive tells her that Rick won't return, insisting that it's impossible since he was sent to a place swarming with their guards who would surely kill him. Suddenly, Rick appears unscathed. The young captive is astonished, unable to believe that Rick is unharmed. Rick apologizes for what happened. His friend then releases the young captive, welcoming Rick back warmly. Rick asks, "What happened to this wall?" His friend replies, "I just broke through it a little." Rick, impressed, responds, "I wouldn't expect any less from you, Renit. You're very strong." Just then, the man in his 40s who was supposed to test Rick reappears, severely injured and collapsing to the ground. Rick rushes to help him, and they begin to talk. The injured man tells Rick that Raster was the one who did this to him. Rick, surprised, asks about the sudden illness, to which the man replies, "I didn't stand a chance against him." Rick realizes that Raster did all this just to be his examiner. The man, saddened by what Raster did, recalls when Raster asked about his dream. He had told Raster about his humble origins in a poor, remote area and his dream of building a school for children who wanted to become adventurers. When I told him that, he beat me, threw me to the ground, hurt me badly, and locked me in this room. The man recounts. He mocked me, calling me a lowly late starter, saying I was nothing, and that children learning from someone like me would also become worthless. He kept hitting me, saying that old folks like us make this world dark. He tortured me, restrained me with chains, and angered me, but I couldn't retaliate. Maybe it's foolish for someone like me to have a dream at all. The man tells Rick you should withdraw from the test. What happened to me will be nothing compared to what he'll do to you. Rick reassures him, placing a hand on his shoulder. It doesn't matter when someone starts. What matters is what they achieve. Meanwhile, Raster deals with the remaining guards who are still alive, berating them. Each one of you is completely useless. Soldiers apologize, but Raster, furious, says, "That pathetic kid is coming, and I will crush his hard work and passion. He will be extraordinarily disqualified from the test, and it will be very entertaining. But since you failed to kill him, you worthless guards, I will make you experience suffering that will make hell seem tame in comparison." Raster unleashes a massive fiery power. Rick, filled with anger, vows to beat Raster, promising a severe beating. Will Rick be able to confront this villain? Find out in the next episode. Please subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell to stay updated with all our new content. Our episode begins with the boy Adolf introducing himself and telling us about the 4 basic abilities. The 4 basic abilities are physical strength, body control, magical energy, and magic control. These powers together greatly affect the strength of an adventurer. Adolf has the ability to see the levels of these 4 basic abilities in other people, as he was born with this extraordinary power. He then uses his ability on players competing against each other and sees that one of the competitors is of rank A. This is not an ordinary competitor. He is very strong. Then his eyes hurt, and he realizes it is dangerous to look at anyone too strong. He then looks at Rick and wonders what's wrong with this gloomy man. He wonders if he will take the test at his age and feels curious about Rick's ability levels. He uses his power to find out how strong Rick is and is surprised that his ability is extremely high. Adolf starts screaming because his eyes hurt a lot. Then the scene shifts to Ryanette, who is walking alone. Alyssa stops her and tells her that she used to be friends with Rick in the past when they worked together in the guild. Ryan tells her that she is a member of Rick's same team. Ryanette then looks at the rest of her friends and offers Alyssa to join them. When Alyssa goes, she is very surprised and asks why there is an orc in this group. Then they get to know each other. The orc then asks what Rick will do in the duel. Ryanette tells him that he will do well. Alyssa then tells them that Rick will train with Raster, an adventurer of rank who always defeats the testers excessively. Then we see Raster's brothers calling out to him and asking him to defeat Rick. Then we see Raster challenging Rick and saying to him, "I never expected that one day I would duel someone like you at this age and week." Rick asks him why he became an adventurer. Raster replies that he has a talent, and even being a noble, being a former adventurer will increase his status, so he plans to retire at the right time. Then Rick tells him that he does not intend to lose to someone like him. Raster asks him to speak to him with respect, so he won't defeat him crushingly. Then Raster starts using first-level nature magic, launching an ice shot and hitting the wall behind Rick. Rick talks to himself and says, "Don't let anger control you. Calm down so you can defeat Raster." Then he remembers the past when Ryanette advised him to use the first minute after the match starts to calm his emotions and focus on observing his opponent. We return to the present and Raster tells him, "If you don't attack, I'll do whatever I want." Raster uses third-level nature magic, igniting flames and exploding the area around him. When the fires are extinguished, we see that Rick is unharmed. We then return to Alyssa and the others, and we see the orc telling Alyssa that a strike like that won't affect Rick. He asks her if she knows the 4 basic abilities that determine an adventurer's strength: physical strength, body control, magical energy, and magic control. The orc informs her that among them, one should develop their magical energy while they are young. Otherwise, there will be no hope for further growth, and this should happen before a person turns 20. Alyssa then tells him that Rick became an adventurer when he was 30 years old, which means Rick's magical energy is very low. The orc then remembers the past when he told Rick that the only thing he would be able to rely on in the end was his body. So, as a first step, they needed to go to the next village and intensify the training. We then see very heavy weights tied to Rick's legs. The orc tells him that those weights are not difficult for him. They only weigh 100 kilograms. Rick is very surprised, but the orc doesn't care and leaves, telling him that they are near the lair of giant monsters and he has to walk with those weights. Then we return to the present, and the orc tells them that he did this to compensate for Rick's lack of magical energy, as Rick trained very intensively in the other 3 abilities. We return to the duel and see Raster telling Rick that the next strike will be a little more painful than the previous one. Raster then uses 4th level nature magic, Hurricane Cutter, and delivers a strong blow to Rick. The orc continues his conversation with his friends, telling them that regarding Rick's physical strength, he trained him from scratch, and their friend Mizé taught him magic control. Rick continued training for 2 years to be able to defend himself with magic. Reinet trained him in body control, and Rick benefited from all the training they provided, becoming part of rank S just like them. We then return to Raster, who uses 4th level nature magic, Shock Burn. Reinet tells Alyssa that Rick is at rank S, but he doesn't realize it. She remembers the past during training when we see Rick smashing a large rock with his hands. The orc tells him that someone of his rank should destroy it with 1 blow. We return to the present and see Raster using a massive amount of magic, throwing rocks and exploding them at Rick. He then drops a very large rock on him, thinking he has defeated Rick. But to his surprise, Rick splits the rock in half and emerges unharmed, shocking Raster and everyone else. Raster then uses quadruple strength fist and attacks Rick with great force, but Rick skillfully blocks the blow. At that moment, Rick understands what Reinet meant about focusing on his opponent's skills in the first minute. He had been too preoccupied with his innate talents and neglected to refine and develop them. Rick thinks to himself, I know I have vast reserves of magical energy, but that won't help if I don't use it wisely. I cannot afford to lose. Master Turi then uses immense power from Hellfire and Blue Flame Fire, launching it at Rick with all his might. But Rick blocks it without blinking an eye, thinking that poorly executed magic isn't worth using more magic to block. He had controlled his magic with precision. Raster, impressed, says, I am amazed that you can be so arrogant over a series of coincidences. But I promise you, my dear, there won't be another coincidence, and I will defeat you now. He then attacks with all his strength. But he is too slow for Rick, who strikes him back, causing Raster to stagger. Jeffrey and his sister are astonished by Rick's strength and remark that he is not normal. Raster realizes that Rick possesses abilities that surpass rank A. You've been lucky, my dear, over and over again. Your luck is very good for a lowly person like you. Rick then says, how reluctant you are to acknowledge me. What I used wasn't even magic. It was just body control. But my level of precision far exceeds your enhancement magic. Raster asks him, all right, but tell me, how did you gain such immense strength in just 2 years at your age? Rick then recalls a flashback of the incredibly harsh training he underwent. The temperature was unbearable, as if I had entered the mouth of a volcano. I was also submerged in burning liquid, to the point where I was gasping for my last breath. I should be dead now. But thanks to the great and mighty orc who possesses exceptional medical skills, I was able to recover. This is all thanks to that mighty orc. Mizet, the boy with yellow hair, also played a part. Rick endured a lot while training with him, including being thrown from high places. Alyssa, the girl with red hair, would throw large rocks at him. Meanwhile, Reinet used body control techniques on him, where the trick was to use the weight of falling objects. At first, he failed at this, and it was very difficult. Raster then says, these are terrible lies. Even if such harsh training existed, what could be your motivation after all this? Tell Auric he's like Lurat San, the man you hurt. My dream is to defeat the strongest monster in the world called Kaiser the Saboteur. Everyone would laugh at him, mocking his words. Raster tells him, my dear, the legends of that hero are not just bedtime stories. Defeating the Saboteur is the dream of a small child. Rick interrupts him, saying it has nothing to do with him. Raster then uses 7th level nature magic called Forest Rope, which binds Rick tightly. He uses his full strength and activates high magical energy, telling him this is the greatest magic a human can use, 8th level nature magic. This is the greatest magic I possess, for I am the man with 1,000 abilities. This is 8th level nature magic, the greatest magic I possess. I am the man with 1,000 abilities. At that moment, Raster's body begins to be covered with tree trunks, and he starts transforming into a monstrous form. Rick then begins to use his magic in true power, declaring that he will break through the shield Raster has created. Raster mocks him, saying, "You won't be able to do anything. Are you so arrogant that you've become desperate now?" Rick asks him how many times he has used this magic, including in training. Raster replies, "I don't know, but in the end, I mastered it after just a few times." Rick is certain that his opponent doesn't fully understand the spell. Rick says, "I've used this magic 100 million times." Raster's followers think he is exaggerating. Alyssa says that's physically impossible, but the wise Ashurk tells her it's possible with the use of time magic. He confirms that Rick indeed did what he claimed. We return to the battle. Raster says, "I've grown tired of listening to your foolish lies. Now I'll do exactly what I did to that old tester I previously defeated and tortured. I'll crush your silly dream, Rick, and turn you into pieces." Raster then begins his attack. But to everyone's surprise, Rick easily breaks free from his bonds and summons the spell in his hand. Raster attacks with 8th level nature magic, and at the same moment, Rick uses 1st level nature magic, Air Shot. The monster attack happens, the monster's shield covering Raster is completely shattered and explodes. Raster is thrown into the air, falling to the ground with severe injuries, unable to move. His followers can't believe that he was defeated by this man in his 40s. Rick, mocking him, says, "What's the matter, first-class elite? My dream is still perfectly intact." Everyone is shocked that this middle-aged man was able to defeat Raster. They remark that this man, who seemed like an ordinary old man, managed to overcome Raster. Rick's friends eagerly wait to congratulate him on his excellent fight. The wise Ashurk tells him that was a fantastic strike. The young girl cheers excitedly and congratulates him on his resounding victory. Rick thanks them sincerely for their strong support and encouragement. Alyssa, delighted, tells him, "You were amazing out there." Rick replies, "I've become much stronger, and it's all thanks to you and your encouragement. I had a wrong idea about this all along. Thank you very much, everyone." Everyone rejoices. And the young girl, Kitaerarete, says, "Instead of all this, let's go have some food." Shortly after, Raster passes by them, completely defeated and barely able to move. Looking in bad shape, he is surprised to see Rick in front of him. Rick says to him, "You're wondering how a genius and elite like you could lose to someone who started late like me." Raster, very angry, replies, "Did you come just to make sarcastic remarks?" His followers are also. Rick says, "I focused on mastering a set number of techniques and trained intensively on them. You should perfect one technique until you feel like you'll vomit blood. That's just my advice to you. I have high hopes for you, adventurer." Raster continues walking and says, "In the next promotion test, I'll be your examiner again. When that happens, I'll be the winner. You better be prepared, lowly one." Then they leave. The scene shifts to sunset, with students waiting for the announcement of the successful candidates in the rank test. Rick waits anxiously to hear his number. Some numbers are called out, and the successful students are overjoyed. Meanwhile, the wise Ashurk and his companions are eating. Alyssa asks, "Should we really be here before the announcement?" The wise Ashurk reassures her, "Don't worry. Our team is sure to pass this test." Rick managed to defeat his examiner. Back at the announcement, Rick is still waiting to hear his number. Ryanette comes to him and says, "You were very nervous when you passed the preliminary test." He replies, "I was just remembering some things, and that made me a bit anxious." Then Rick's number is called, indicating that he has passed the test. Will he be able to pass the remaining tests, or will there be obstacles in his way? We'll find out in the upcoming episodes. Stay tuned, and please subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell to receive all the latest updates. The episode begins with Ryanette talking to Rick. "You seem very nervous after passing the preliminary test." He said, "I remembered some things from the past." Then the scene shifts to a flashback of Rick as a child, reading a book and saying, "One will obtain a treasure that grants any wish after defeating the most dangerous monster. Caesar the Saboteur," he continues. "One of the children who dream of becoming adventurers will be able to obtain this treasure and have their wish come true, and I truly believe in this." Next, we see Rick telling his father that he will become an adventurer like Yamato. His mother responds, saying, "Adventuring is very dangerous, and you could die at any moment. I would prefer if you chose a different path." His father adds, you should think about a stable, respectable job and stop dwelling on these trivial matters. Rick becomes upset and sad by their words. Later, we see Rick sitting with a doctor who tells him, congratulations, we found a mark indicating you have an innate skill. People with this mark are very rare, but you are one of them, although we don't yet know what your innate skills are. They seem extraordinary. Rick excitedly asks, like Yamato. The doctor replies, yes, you might be like him one day, but these skills can't be developed through training. You have to wait for them to manifest on their own. After learning he has an innate skill like the brave Yamato, Rick runs joyfully and says, once my skills appear, I'll proudly announce it to my mom and dad and become a powerful adventurer. The next day, Rick wakes up and his friends ask him if his extraordinary powers have appeared. He replies, not yet, it's only been a day. The following day, they ask again, and then a year later, they still ask, but he responds that his powers haven't appeared yet. We see him training in front of a candle, but no extraordinary power emerges. Some time later, Rick is sitting with his friends, and one of them says there are cases where the skills don't appear despite having the mark. Why don't you become an adventurer anyway? Many adventurers don't have skills and still make a lot of money. Rick responds, that's not what adventure means to me. I'm looking for something more thrilling. Sometime later, Rick enters to speak with his mother, saying, you have been appointed as a receptionist at an adventurer's guild. His mother is very happy, and his father tells him it's a respectable and stable job. I am proud. Next, we see Rick at the guild, starting his work with many papers in front of him. He talks with the adventurers and seems envious of them, unable to become an adventurer himself. From time to time, he goes to train, hoping his skill will manifest, but to no avail. He appears sad and distracted, feeling that being an ordinary employee is not what he wants. He wants to be an adventurer. He continues to read the book he read as a child about the legendary knight Yamato. The next day at the guild, an adventurer talks to the receptionist, who confirms the completion of his mission. Rick comes from behind her and says, eliminating the slime, and your reward is 20,000 pounds. The adventurer thanks him for helping with his reward. Rick then says, there's been an increase in monster sightings in the city recently, so I think a new mission will be announced soon. He adds, they are just monsters driven out of their lairs, wandering in the town. She asks if it seems dangerous, and he reassures her, don't worry. It's normal. They're mostly low-level monsters, so it will probably be a D-rank mission. She responds, then I will go and prepare everything, so we can handle it quickly. Later, an adventurer named Zaid approaches Rick and says, you seem off today. Zaid then smiles and shows a medal, indicating he has been promoted. He says now I can earn more money by adventuring on my own. Rick is shocked and says, congratulations, Zaid. Later that evening, we see Rick drunk, lamenting that Zaid was promoted to B rank while he's been stuck in the same position for 14 years, performing the same tasks repeatedly. He acknowledges that his daily life and income are stable, but he is clearly dissatisfied with his job. He says, if I become an adventurer, I would be very strong by now. Suddenly, he hears a woman scream that monsters have appeared. Rick rushes to the scene and sees a giant troll, a mid-level monster, and wonders what it's doing in the area. He steps in front of a girl to protect her, but she effortlessly slices the monster into pieces with one strike. She thanks him for trying to save her and introduces herself as Renette. Later, as they walk together, Rick admits he was planning to rescue her, but she ended up saving him instead. He is impressed by her strength and asks about her rank, wondering if she is a B or a rank adventurer. She replies, no, I am S rank. Rick is shocked, knowing that S rank adventurers are directly overseen by the main headquarters and are considered elite. He tells her, I never imagined you would be of such a high rank. It feels like I've had the chance to meet a legendary adventurer like you. I have a strange question to ask. Rick then explains that he has always dreamed of becoming an adventurer and defeating Caesar the Saboteur. He mentions that he has an innate skill that hasn't manifested yet and asks if he has any chance of succeeding as an adventurer now, at 30 years old. Renate responds saying, in the previous situation with the monster, I saw that you possess courage, an important trait for adventurers. However, you work as a receptionist at the guild. Do you understand the importance of magical reserves? Rick replies, it's hard to develop them unless you're young, right? She clarifies, it's not just difficult, it's essentially impossible. A certain amount of magical reserves is necessary for an adventurer. To be honest, there is no chance of you succeeding if you start now. Rick is stunned by her words but hides his shock. He thanks her, saying, "Thank you for being honest with me. Now I can stop clinging to this dream I should have let go of years ago." She apologizes, and he tells her he is glad to have met a beautiful girl like her today and that he is in a great mood. He then asks, "How about we have dinner sometime?" She agrees, saying she is free tomorrow, leaving Rick surprised by her immediate acceptance. The next day, Rick is singing and seems to be in a great mood, which his colleague at the guild notices. He tells her, "Yes, I'm in a good mood. Let's double our efforts and work even harder today." Then Zaid appears, boasting about his B-rank status, and Rick assigns him a shadow wolf hunting mission. In the evening, Rick is singing again, thinking about his dinner with such an attractive girl and feeling that his life isn't so bad. He considers that if everything goes well tonight, they might even start dating. Suddenly, he hears people shouting that monsters have appeared again. Rick rushes to the scene and finds Renette fighting off the monsters. Seeing the sheer number of monsters, he tells her, "I'll just be in your way. I'll leave this to you," and steps back. Renee begins her attack using magical needles that cut through the monsters with deadly precision. She swiftly exterminates them all, leaving Rick in awe of her power. He remarks this is the strength of true adventurers. Renee continues to slaughter the monsters one by one, slicing them into pieces. Rick is still astonished by her incredible strength, hardly believing that she could defeat all those monsters in just 1 minute. Suddenly, Renette senses a dangerous presence, feeling as if she's entered a living nightmare, facing a massive dragon. She becomes overwhelmed and loses control, prompting Rick to rush to her side to check on her. Meanwhile, monsters start appearing again, and adventurers begin fighting them off. They order Rick to leave the area because it's overrun with monsters. As the adventurers continue to battle the monsters, Zaid announces that the guild has issued an emergency mission and tells Rick and Renette to leave. Watching the adventurers fight so powerfully, Rick feels envious because he has no strength to contribute. Renette warns him that the place is very dangerous, but he reassures her, "Don't worry, Zaid is here and he's a B-rank adventurer." She tells him that won't be enough at all. "There's a large dragon near B, and my body suffers from a severe reaction every time I sense dragon magic. I lose control of the magic inside my body and become extremely exhausted." Rick says a dragon would never appear in a place like this. Suddenly, a huge dragon appears in the sky, leaving everyone in disbelief that it could be in a human area. Everyone realizes that all the monsters were fleeing from this dragon. As the dragon lands, it looks at one of the adventurers, who launches a magical attack at it, but it has no effect. Everyone is shocked, and the dragon begins to rage, causing everyone to fall to the ground from its mere reaction. Zed, their leader, tells them, "We need to run. We can't fight this thing." They all start to flee, but the dragon erects a barrier, trapping them. The adventurers attempt to break the barrier, but it remains unshaken and unaffected by their attacks. Everyone believes they are doomed, but Rick steps forward towards the dragon, surprising everyone since he is just a receptionist with no apparent power. Rick tells them, "If I face this thing, maybe I can die as an adventurer." He thinks to himself, "Even though I can't resist it here, if it touches me with just the tip of its claw, I'll be torn to pieces. I felt better after giving up my dream, but my blood has been boiling all this time. I've always wanted to live this way." Rick picks up a stone from the ground and throws it at the dragon, but it has no effect. Zaid, the leader, commands his fellow adventurers, "We won't let a receptionist advance ahead of us, adventurers." The adventurers begin to attack the dragon with combined strikes, but the dragon gets angry and prepares to use its fire breath to wipe them out in one go. Zaid notices this and uses his iron body technique, creating an iron barrier to protect them from the dragon's fire. The dragon unleashes its fiery breath, causing everyone to fall to the ground from its immense power. They think this is the end. Rene laments, "If only I could fight the dragon." Suddenly, Rick emerges from beneath the ground, shaking off the rocks on his body, and stands before the dragon again. He declares, "I will turn my dream into reality." All the adventurers are stunned, thinking he has lost his mind. At that moment, Rick gains a new skill for the first time. He manages to lift the dragon with one hand and slams it to the ground. Renee notices a massive amount of magic flowing from him, visible to the naked eye. Rick's body is covered in a magical aura, and he is thrilled to have finally acquired his innate skill. He begins to test this new power against the dragon. The dragon launches a powerful attack at him, but Rick counters with his overwhelming magical strength, piercing the dragon and creating a hole in it. Everyone is shocked by the receptionist's incredible power. Rick himself can hardly believe it and collapses to the ground. On the other side, Rick wakes up to find himself lying on a bed with Renette by his side. As he tries to get up, he feels intense pain. Renette advises him to stay still, explaining that all the magical circuits in his body were destroyed and he was on the brink of death. He asks her how long he's been unconscious, and she tells him it has been a full week. She has been waiting to invite him to join her team, the Orichalcum Fist, whose goal is the same as his, to defeat Caesar the Saboteur. Rick is astonished and can hardly believe it. Renette assures him that Caesar the Saboteur truly exists, and that Rick has shown the courage needed to become stronger and fight alongside them. She offers him her guarantee that he can become an adventurer. Rick, overwhelmed, says, "This is the first time anyone has ever said that to me. Is it really possible, Renette? Can I become an adventurer even though I've taken such a long path?" He begins to cry, and Renette comforts him, assuring him that he can indeed become an adventurer. Returning to the present, Rick recalls these long memories and realizes he has passed the test. He is now a fully qualified adventurer and receives the golden necklace as proof. Renette congratulates him on this great achievement. Rick thanks them all deeply for everything they have done for him. He raises his hand high and remembers his childhood declaration, "I will become an adventurer." Now, he proudly says, "I am an adventurer." Thus, he achieves his dream and our episode ends here. Stay tuned for more episodes of this wonderful anime. Please subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell to receive all the latest updates.